Hello, everyone, and welcome to Africa Fire Mission's weekly virtual training session. My name is Mike. I'm a project coordinator here with Africa Fire Mission. We're so happy you took the time out of your busy schedules to join us for today's training. Today, we're joined by Webster Marshall. He's the research chairman for the Firefighter Cancer Foundation, and he's here today to talk to us about some cancer awareness issues. Really appreciative of him taking his time to come and join us today. Just a few administrative notes before we get started. If you stick around for at least 75% of today's training, which is usually about 45 minutes, you will get a certificate of attendance for today's training. If you've got multiple people joining you on your screen, go ahead and shoot me an email with their names, and I will make sure that we get a certificate of attendance for everybody that's there. If you lose your network connection or you can't complete today's class for some reason, keep an eye on the chat there. I'll be posting a link to our Google Drive where you can access today's presentation as well as our other presentations from both this year and last year. If you attend those, watch the video of the training and answer a few questions about the training, I'll get you a certificate of attendance for those as well. I invite you to stick around after we complete today's training for tea time. That's a place where you can ask more questions about today's topic or talk about anything else that may be on your mind. At this point in time, I think we're going to jump right into today's training. So I'm going to pass things over to Webster to get things started. Take it away, sir.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for jumping in today. I'm going to share my screen and show everyone what we're going to be talking about today.
Looks good.
Yep. All right. So, like Mike said, my name is Webster Marshall. I'm a firefighter on the East Coast of the United States. I'm in the state of Georgia, just near our capital, the city of Atlanta. I've been a firefighter for 23 years. Started when I was 18 years old. Volunteered, much like a lot of you, and started with not a lot. I've seen everything in our country from one fire station, one fire engine, fire department where we shared a couple sets of bunker gear and we shared a couple air packs, SCBAs, and we didn't have very much. We had to make do. But as time went on, things changed. Things changed here. I moved around to different places, and I've seen a lot of things in my career. Unfortunately, I've not had the opportunity to travel overseas, although I intend to within the next year or two to try to help train and teach in other countries. But I wanted to jump at the chance to help with this. And after I met the folks at the Africa Fire Mission, this seems like a pretty interesting thing. And I hope we can help you guys today with some of the things that we can talk about. But a little bit more about me. I sit on a protective clothing committee. So what we have in the United States is NFPA, the National Fire Protection Association, and we regulate basically how everything's built. What my specialty is protective clothing. I'm working on some research projects to try to make it better, try to make it more accessible, to try to make it perform better for us, and by proxy, anybody else in the world that can take advantage of some of this technology. The companies and the groups and the end users that we work with, the firefighters that we work with, all have ties to different areas, and we want to bring what we know to different places, especially somewhere as far away as you guys through the wonders of the internet. So let's jump right into what we're going to talk about today, the fast facts of cancer. Most of this is based off, so when we throw numbers, most of this is based off of numbers and statistics from the United States, but in the world, it's pretty relatable as far as these type of exposures and these type of illnesses. So with that being said, so some numbers from the United States. There is on average 1.7 million new cases of cancer each year. This is just general population. This is anybody that doesn't do what we do, doesn't do what you do, as in the fire service, and that's a pretty astounding number. And it's high and low in other parts of the world. But on average for the United States, these are some of our things. Men, 1 and 2 lifetime risk, women 1 and 3. So for the men working in, I'm sorry, for the general population, the male population, you know 1 out of 2 have a lifetime risk of having cancer, and 1 out of 3 women. Cancer is 1 in 4 deaths, second most common cause general population, and then more than 60% of the firefighter deaths in the United States are attributed to cancer. There's a lot that's been talked about with this in the world. It's starting to take hold better. The United States saw that we had issues, and for over the past 30 or so years has been working on it. We've gotten better, but we haven't solved the issue. In speaking with Mike before we got started here, some of the things that the difficulties that you guys face as far as having to deal with something like an occupational illness like cancer is the same thing that we face here. The unfortunate side is we don't have a great solution. And the odd part about that is, the cost of what it costs when someone gets cancer. 124 billion with a B dollars a year, American dollars a year, is what cancer costs. And equate that to what's 124 billion dollars mean to you? I can't fathom 124 billion dollars. It doesn't make, I can't figure that out. I'm just a regular firefighter who likes to talk to other people and try to teach, but 124 billion dollars is a lot, and that's part of the problem. There's disability days, and and basically what that means is 33 million lost work days, 7.5 billion lost work productivity hours. So if I get sick and can't go to work today, that's a shift that's not covered. If I get sick from cancer and I can't go to work this 6 months, now what does my fire department, what does my family, what does the volunteer department that I work with do? They're not able to do that either. Occupational cancer, so cancer that we could get because of the job that we do, that you could get because of the job that you do, 4 to 10% of the cases, right? So when we look at that, 10% of the cases, of the cancer cases in Georgia, where I live, are attributed to firefighter cancers. We've done the numbers, and it is that big of an issue. So what's causing this? What links us to different types of cancers? Obviously, if we go to a fire, we know that those things are bad. What happens if you go to a wreck with a car or a tractor, or an industrial accident in a factory, or someone just spilled chemicals, or there's other problems? Everything that we do in the fire service, no matter where we live, is going to present an exposure to some sort of toxin or some sort of problem. With those toxins being said, how are they going to get there? Are we going to breathe them in? Is it going to get on our skin and absorb through our skin? Are we going to have a puncture wound or an injury where it gets in through an open wound? These different things are a problem. And when you think about what we do and what we've learned, the chemicals are varying sizes and all particles that we can't see. So they're so small that we can't see them. We know that they're there. It's the same as if you spilled some chemical and it burned your eyes. Those are pieces of the parts of that chemical that are absorbing into your body through your eyes or through your nose or through your mouth, through your skin. And then what about diagnosis of illness if these things caused us to be sick? How are we going to figure that out? What does what does the diagnosis and what does the healthcare side of this look like? You know, how do you figure out that you have a problem with this? And if we have a problem with some of these cancers, it's not going to be tomorrow. It's going to be 6 months, 18 months. It's going to be a couple years. It could be 10 years down the road. And then you've contracted something because your body absorbed some sort of chemicals and it changed some of your cell structures. And then we got to get to how we're going to treat it. You know, with the complexity of how we can contract cancer, it's even more complex in how we treat it. And some of the treatments is a problem with access. You know, are you able to access? Am I able to access? It doesn't matter where we are. Access is difficult because cancer is such a complicated illness to treat. It doesn't matter if we're the fire service or a general public. It's a complicated thing to treat. And if you're next to a hospital, that hospital might not even have the treatment modalities for the type of cancer that you have because some of it is so laser focused specific. And then what is the cumulative exposures that we have? It's not just the fires. So what about being around diesel motors and vehicle operations and tool work and everything that we do because of the things that we have to have in the fire service every day? What about being around more and more sick people if we have to go help with someone that's ill or injured? What about getting up and never getting to rest appropriately because you have to go on so many runs in a row to go help people multiple times in an evening or at night? You know, some of the biggest issues with our health as firefighters has to do with our inability to rest and recover sometimes if we're very busy. So, and then the last part of this is, how are we going to relate this back to our job, or do we understand how we could relate this back to our job? So some of these things that we're going to cover a little bit better today as well. So here's just some examples of firefighter cancer. The increased risk firefighter cancers for different body systems. So testicular cancer, a little over 2 times greater risk. Multiple myeloma, almost a 1.5 times greater risk. Lymphoma, 1.5. Skin cancer, almost 1.5. Brain cancer, a little bit higher. Malignant melanoma, prostate cancer, colon, leukemia, breast cancer. I want to talk about multiple myeloma real quick. So multiple myeloma is much lower incidence in general population than it is in the fire service. The fire service has a very, very high risk of something that is extremely rare in the grand scheme of all the cancers in the general population, due in part to the things that we're exposed to, the chemicals that we go to, the things that fires when we have fires. It's just an ever growing issue that is not specific to just America. This is everywhere. It doesn't matter where we are. And my hope for today is not to tell you that there's a lot of things that you have to do, but there's a lot of things that you could look out for and make decisions based off of what you have. You know, I work at a very big fire department, but I also work at a very small fire department. And I can't do the things that I do at my very large fire department ever at my very small fire department because we don't have the money, we don't have the resources, we don't have the tools. It's very different. So I hope that this gives you information to be able to apply some simple techniques that we'll talk about wherever you are and make it more grandiose, more robust if you have those things available. But if you don't, you'll have at least a simple basis. So how are we exposed? What about the cleaning, the cleaners and solvents and chemicals that we keep at the fire station? Our fire stations are industrial buildings. our industrial places where we keep our vehicles. They are going to have different things that you probably won't have in your home. What about the diesel exhaust? You know, something about diesel exhaust in America, it's become popular to have diesel removal systems that attach to the tailpipes of the vehicles. But what if you don't have that? Can you pull it outside and let it run? Can you open the doors? The biggest thing is ventilation. You have to, something as simple as bringing clean air or allowing clean air to come in to where you're operating tools, your fire engine, no matter what it is. That's the biggest thing for that. Air quality should be something simple that we can do to help bring the outside air into the building or into the area that we're working, to try to help limit some of those things that we may absorb. And what about mold or bacteria? Again, it's just about taking care of our equipment. If you have bunker gear that gets wet, or you have hose that gets wet, trying to do the best thing that you can to sit it out and let it dry some, trying to rinse off or brush off the big parts of the fire or big parts of whatever you came in contact with, to remediate or clean the best possible. That's something to kind of keep in the back of your mind as you move through some of these things. And what's coming out of some of these fires, there's a lot of work that we're doing, and we're hoping to spread this to anyone that's willing to listen. But there's a lot of work that we're doing to help understand what are these chemicals doing to us, and what are these chemicals doing to our protective clothing. So what's it doing to our bunker gear? Hydrocarbons, aromatic hydrocarbons, PAHs, aldehydes, cyanides, acids, particulates, so the stuff floating around in the smoke that's coming off the fire. All the other things that are listed in this little chemical list can be vapors or aerosols. So they're going to be little micro drops of moisture that are based in some sort of terrible chemical. And then what are they going to do? If it's a low exposure, so just a small amount, we smell smoke and it maybe irritates your eyes, might not be a bad thing. Your body can fight it and should be okay. But if it's a very high exposure, makes you feel unwell, maybe it damages your clothing or damages your bunker gear, that might be a different exposure. But understanding that on that day you were exposed to something, and if something changes with the way you feel, something changes with the way you're able to get up and move around each day, then that's something to investigate early. The signs for cancer sometimes are things that we may just brush off. That I'm having a hard time moving, or I'm having an issue with pain in my stomach that's different, or I'm having some issue with vision, or I all of a sudden I start to feel dizzy too much. We brush off a lot of those things to just, I'll feel better. It's not a big deal. But maybe that's your body's giving you little cues that there may be something going on. We might not need a multi-thousand-dollar test. Maybe we just need to listen to our bodies and figure out if it's something that's changed, and just ask somebody to help us with it. What about some synthetic materials? And this is going to come from things that are in buildings, things that we are coming in contact with. Sometimes things that protective clothing or tools or equipment is just stored in could be bad for us. And then what about asbestos or heavy metals? Asbestos is a long time insulator. You still see it around a lot of high temperature situations in the industrial settings. As asbestos and some improved metals. The asbestos by itself, not a problem. If it breaks off in little pieces and floats around in the air, or we ingest it somehow, then it becomes a problem. As far as an efficiency of a material, asbestos is fantastic. The side effects of when it starts to break apart or break down is a really bad thing for us. So what about some other exposure factors? The combined effects of a bunch of exposures. So what synergistic means where we're exposed to chemicals at a fire, and then we're exposed to too much diesel exhaust because we forgot to open the door, or we forgot to pull the vehicle out when we were working on it, or we're exposed to some sort of chemicals that we were using at the fire department to take care of cleaning up after a call where someone was injured or something like that. I'll tell you a little story. I was on an ambulance in 2017, and we were cleaning the back of the ambulance. Um, Someone mistakenly put the wrong cleaner in our ambulance, and I got very, very sick. I was in the hospital for a week, and then I was confined to my house for 45 days where I didn't have the lung capacity to walk more than 10 or 15 feet without feeling like I was going to pass out, all from a chemical that was sprayed and got into the air and damaged my lungs really, really bad. Um, it could be something as simple as cleaning that can hurt us. So it's not necessarily that you have to have equipment to make this better. You just have to have an understanding that the things around us may not be good for us, and there's probably really simple things that we can do. Something as simple as just knowing that it's there is one of the biggest tools that I could say people you would need. And then what about intensity versus duration? So that incident where I was injured at work on the ambulance um, was a single event. So it was one time that I was exposed to a really high level of chemicals and it made me sick. But what about the number of fires that I've been to in 23 years? That's a duration. So that's over a long time. So 23 years, how many times have I done training fires? How many times have I been to real house fires where someone called for emergency help? How many times have I been to lots of grass fires where it wasn't just grass burning, maybe? How many times have I taught classes and had to clean up after the classes? So all of those things are a cumulative chemical exposure, not necessarily one bad event. One bad event can happen. There's so many. I'm sure all of you, if you thought about something, there's probably one bad event that someone's told you about where either someone was injured or someone was exposed to something that could hurt us immediately, but the long term, will I find out that I have cancer one day? No one knows. I try to keep up with it and listen to my body. I try to keep up with it and get blood tests if I can from time to time, just to make sure that there's not things that are going to sneak up on me that I might not see. So there's things like that. And then what if it is over time? How often did the exposures happen? So what was the time between the house fire that I had last week and the house fire that I'll have next? Are they every day? Is it multiple fires or multiple incidents in one day that I've exposed myself to? And then at those incidents, did we at least take the hose or a brush and knock off the majority of the bad stuff that we've been exposed to get ready for the next time? And then what about physical stressors? Have you and you think about the last time that you responded to an emergency? The last time I responded to emergency, I was sitting at the fire station, writing in a book, and we were talking about things that we were going to do later that day. And immediately we got dispatched to a fire, and I went from arresting, just relaxing, hanging out at the fire station, doing what we normally have to do, to, as fast as my heart can go, as fast as my mind can move, as fast as my feet will go to get into the fire engine to go help someone. What about the stress that that puts on us? Even that, and we talked about the sleep a little bit, but even that will keep us, will keep us from staying as healthy as we could be. Is that something, if, going from 0 to 100, is that something that the general public does often? That's something that's very specific to emergency responders. And it's a problem because it hurts us in the long term, where it can make us less susceptible to effective healing because of the stress that we put on ourselves. It's an altruistic thing. It's good because we're there to help the community, our neighbors, our families, our friends. But what is it doing to us? But then outside of that, how do we make it better? Can we take a little time and help our bodies recuperate every now and then? Can we try to get rest the day after maybe we ran a bunch of responses? Hopefully, but there's small things. And then what can we do to limit some of these issues facing firefighters and cancer? So what does our lifestyle look like? How do we eat? How do we take care of ourselves? How do we exercise? What, and when we say culture, we're looking at a culture of understanding, a culture of effort, a culture of learning and training, not necessarily the culture that you have where you live versus the culture that I have where I live. It's the culture of how you conduct yourself, knowing that we have these things going on around us that could possibly hurt us. What can we do to help maintain our buildings? Is it possible to open up and clean up and try to isolate some of the chemicals? Can we put them in one specific location so they're not spread around and causing issues with us in lots of places? Can we take care of and operate the tools or the fire engines and the fire trucks outside instead of inside? Can we make sure that if we are doing that, that if there's a door into the living quarters, that we keep those closed when we're doing some of those things with tools or equipment? What do we do to maintain those things? If we take a fire engine that's ready to go to the fire in let's say it happens in 5 minutes. Then when we get back to the fire station, what do we do to get it ready for the next time? Do we clean the cab out? Do we clean off our gear? Do we clean off our air packs, our SCBAs? Do we clean off our tools to make sure that they're ready? All right. Do we try to get most of that off of us, wipe down, rinse off, to make sure that we don't carry those things around on the clothes that you wear when you take your bunker gear off? Because who else could be exposed to the chemicals that we're exposed to? Could we have an issue? Could we have an issue and take these chemicals home to our families? I think that if we understand that, especially children who are more susceptible to absorbing chemicals because how rapidly their bodies are growing, that if we take the things that could potentially harm us as adults and we don't get some of it off or try to get some of it off before we go back and I hug my son, or I see my daughter, or I do something with my wife, that is another way that we could expose further. But something so simple as just to make sure that we think about that before we go interact with them, or we take a little bit of time after our incidents and that we clean up a little bit. While we're cleaning up a little bit, that we help by having a change of clothes, or cleaning ourselves off a little bit to make sure that we reduce some of the things that could transfer to our skin or to our body. And then hydration, eating healthy, keeping your body at top shape so you can fight against those things. What do you do for nutrition? What do you do for sleep? How do you exercise? What is do you think about hydration and keeping your body and your blood volume in good shape? An adult male at about 40 years old doing 20 minutes of difficult work can lose a couple pints of of plasma volume in one work session. So what does that mean to us? That means that our body is losing the ability to transport and efficiently get rid of contaminants that could be in our blood. That means that we are susceptible to blood clots. That means that we are susceptible to organs that are inefficient at running their processes. That means that we could have diminished brain function because of hydration issues. That means that our muscles will have a difficult time operating, all from the loss of hydration, the loss of blood volume. How do we fight against that? Well, we have to try to stay ahead of these things and understand that we need to be ready for the next time that an emergency happens, because the emergency, we understand through this whole presentation, could be that we are exposed to something that can make us sick. But if we keep our bodies healthy, we can fight against it much more efficiently. What about exercise and sleep? Those two go hand in hand. If you get good rest when you can, the best that you can, and you exercise regularly, then not only will you be ready for the next thing that happens, because our job is not easy, it's difficult, but we'll also feel better after the fact, because we can recover quickly instead of taking a long time to recover and get ready for the next incident. Part of that is nutrition. Can we snack or eat healthy during the day to make sure that we have the energy, that our bodies has the fuel to do the next thing that's going to be difficult for us? All of this is important. What do you have as far as operating guidelines or procedures to help keep up with some of these things we're discussing within your department? Like I said, you don't have to have $1 million machines and thousands of dollars of this or thousands of dollars of that to have a program that works to help limit this issue for any of you. Where I work, we have big mechanical extractor machines to wash bunker gear, but I also have a small department where we use brushes and water to get the stuff off, because we don't have anything else. So it's possible even down to something so simple and rudimentary as just rinsing it off, especially when it comes down to fire contaminants and things like that. So we've talked a lot about work, but what about home? If we try to do these things at work, then when we go home from the fire department, we need to make sure that we try to set ourselves up for success to help our families, set ourselves up for success to be ready for the next time we have to go back to work. So we have to have a little bit of a separation, if possible, from the work lifestyle and the home lifestyle. The home lifestyle in America, we all have other jobs. We all have other things that we have to do because of the money that the fire departments pay us and what it costs to live here now. So what we try to teach is take some time to help you recover from what you just did. If you exercised really hard, what would you do to recover from the exercise. We'd probably drink some water. We'd probably drink some drink. We'd probably eat something. We would rest. The same thing applies to a shift or a work time at the fire department, or just running one call at the fire department. It takes a little bit of time for your heart to recover. It takes a little bit of time for your body to recover, for you to get back to where you were before that incident happened. Because when you go and respond to an emergency incident and your body ramps up really, really high, your body dumps chemicals. It's fight or flight. You are working to solve a problem. Your brain has to function, your heart has to function, vital organs. But then your body has to recover from that chemical dump. It takes time. And the same thing could be said if we run a shift. Even if you don't run any calls the day that you might be at the fire station, your mind is still operating under the assumption that you could run a call, and your body's always a little higher than it would be if you're just relaxing at home. So it takes time. The lifestyle of having a process to relax at home is very important. So some of these learned behaviors that we need to change at work. We've talked about isolating chemicals. What about making sure that we have good meals? What about making sure that we clean our equipment and take care of it? What about making sure that we have habits of taking the vehicles outside? All of these things are changes or learned behaviors. It's just a process. And if we know where some of these exposures can come from, then brainstorm and come up with a process that works for you. Things that work for me probably don't work for other people. And I'm real about that. That's fine. But most people have things that they know they can do to mitigate most of this, as long as they know that it's there. And what about supporting best practices from the top? So I'm not in charge of the fire departments that I work for. I'm an operations firefighter, and I work on a single engine company that runs in a city of 1 million people. So that means that not only do the people at my fire station and my engine have to buy in and understand that these things are important, but we also have to make sure that our fire chiefs, our health and wellness officers, our city officials, county officials, state officials from the government side understand that this is important. I would hazard to guess that you guys are just like me, that most people in the general public have no idea that we have this problem. They just know that we solve their problems. So if we don't make sure that we have some of these best practices and this education passed up the chain of command to the top, all the way down to the people at the very bottom and the new people that may be coming in, they'll never know what to look for, and they may not know what to help us with. So how old are your buildings? I'm in a building that's 70 years old. And I'm also in a building that's 10 years old. They're two different places. What accumulates in a building after 20, 30, 40, 50, 70 years? Are the things that may accumulate in those buildings possibly going to hurt us? Is it something, if there's not much that we can do about it, is it something that we can at least identify and understand how to work around it? What about the energy dashboards? You know, what that means for us is how do you divide the electricity? What is the energy rating of a building? Insulation, non-insulation, how is it built? How is it designed? If you're able to build new buildings, right now we're trying to build a new fire station for our 70-year-old fire station. And there's a lot that goes into it here. But then what about energy conservation systems? Kind of ties into it. And then the diesel exhaust removal. We don't have that. We probably never will. We can't afford it. There in here, sometimes you can get grants, sometimes you can't, to help pay for things. But if we don't have a diesel exhaust removal, can we make sure that we leave the doors open and pull the vehicles out? Is that a simple way to get started? I think so. And the zoning of toxins. So we keep the bad stuff near the bad stuff and the clean stuff near the clean stuff. Super simple. Do we want to have dirty equipment in the kitchen where we may cook our meals? We'll try not to. Do we want to try to keep most of that stuff with the fire engine or in the apparatus bay or where you may work on your tools? That's a good plan. If there's ways that you can cycle this, so we go from dirty to clean, just like a hot, warm, and cold zone, if we talked about hazardous material spill, or if we talked about the danger zones of a fire scene, we can treat the fire station the same way. Our fire hose, our tools, our gear, our air packs, our fire engines all go to the hot zone. So if we go back to the fire station, then let's call that our hot zone. And where we rest, where we sleep, where we eat, that would be the cold zone. And try to limit the exposure, try to limit the chemicals, try to limit anything bad, right, that may get to those places to help you manage that better. So over all of this, you have a higher possibility to stay healthy and survive your career, survive your retirement, spend time with your family, spend time with your friends. That's the goal. Over here, there's a push to reduce what's called VOCs, volatile organic compounds. And it's different in a lot of places in the world, but what that means for us is the VOCs are other chemicals that mimic what comes out in fires. But they can come out of new furniture. It comes from the plastics and the glues and the resins and the chemicals and the acids that it takes to make synthetic furniture mostly now, floor coverings, things like that. And there's a push, at least here in the States, to try to limit that. If you've ever cleaned the inside of a car and there's a film on the inside of the window, especially when it's hot, some of that is dust and some of that is the off-gassing, these VOCs that are coming out of the seat cushions and the plastics and the synthetics that are in your vehicle. That's the same thing that happens in buildings, but it happens a long time and we're just exposed to it more. So there's a push in different places in the world to try to limit that as well. And then what about green cleaning solutions? Is there something that is more natural to clean with? Does it have to be harsh chemicals? Harsh chemicals work fantastic. They're bad for us. They leave residue that can hurt us. They can get into foods, to food sources and kill us. So the possibility or the effort to just look for things that are less chemical laden, and sometimes the less chemical laden things are cheaper, especially when you talk economics. And then what about the decontamination and storage of your equipment? You know, how do you manage the things that you have? I have a place where we have a lot. I have a place where we don't have very much. I have friends that are very near to where I live that live in a small community and have a dirt floor fire station, and they don't have any money for the year, so they have to do fundraisers and ask the community for support so they can help protect their community. In the other places, you know, the big city that I work in, there's so many things that we have available to us, but then understanding that there are many ways that people have things available to them is extremely important. You know, so what is important about decontamination and storage of our equipment? So I think the most simple thing is the most important. Here in the United States, we call it preliminary exposure reduction. And all that means is that we rinse off and brush off as much as we can, either at the scene or as early as possible after a fire or an incident where we get nasty. And how do we store it? You know, we want to make sure that the gear is taken care of, that the SCBAs are taken care of, that our equipment that we rely on to keep us safe is taken care of, and that we store it appropriately. If we put it out, we don't clean it, we don't take care of it, how long will it last us? If we take care of things, it could last a very long time. But at the same time, the things that may not last because we didn't take care of them could make us very sick. So it's important that we find some ways to work around that. So what can we do? We keep our apparatus clean the cabs out, make sure that we clean the seats, clean where we ride on all the calls, because it's not always a fire. If you can, monitor the air. Monitor the air when you go to some of these incidents. Clean your bunker gear and store it in bags, or store it appropriately, to try to keep some of the other things from getting on it, so it's as clean as possible when you get to put it on. If you can train, I'm all about training. Train as real as possible, but you don't have to do that all the time, because some of the very real training can make us very, very sick and could possibly kill us, depending on what we're using. And what about your station clothes or your civilian clothes? How are you going to manage those? Make sure that you don't take this stuff home to your family. Make sure that you don't take it home to your family. Mental health is an issue in the United States. Mental health is a problem where we have a very high suicide rate in the fire service. We are trying to make this better, but the biggest thing is, I think people have forgotten to check on each other. We've lost the culture of looking after one another to make sure that that people understand that there are difficulties that we're going to face, and then we need to help each other with them. If we go to an incident where a bunch of people were injured or killed, we need to make sure that we can deal with that. If we go to an incident, I hope that it never happens, where one of our firefighters is hurt or killed. It's very difficult to deal with that, but we need to do that together. The clergy helps. We have healthcare organizations. We have groups that are peer support. All very, very good things. I saw that you guys have had some of those things, or will have some of those things on the presentation list coming up, and that's a very important subject as well. Nutrition's important. Hydration we covered. Exercise and sleep, they go together. You have to make sure that exercise and sleep. Take care of yourself, because if we don't take care of ourselves, then we can't help others. And learning what I've learned about the dedication that you all have to what you do, where you live, is impressive. And it's really good to see that people care as much as Mike has expressed to me that you guys do. It's impressive that your dedication to be on learning times like this, listening to people from other countries. I applaud everything that you do. I hope that I've given you a little bit of information to help understand what's going on with this, and that this is just the tip of the iceberg, but here are some things that you could see. So with that being said, prevention's better than treatment. We need to make sure that we try to catch these things early, that we don't get hooked with missing something that was a cue that told us that we had something going on, and that you stay as healthy and can do this as long as you can, and be with your families as long as you can for the foreseeable future. So with that being said, I'm going to turn it back over to Mike, and we're going to answer some questions. Anything you guys want to talk about, I'd love to expand on it. and we'll go from there.
Thanks, Webster. Really appreciate that. Boy, that was packed with a lot of good information, a lot of stuff that you touched on there. At this point in time, we'll open up the floor. If there's any questions, you guys could unmute yourself. You can use the raise hand feature. You can type your question in the chat. There was a question in the chat about asbestos and why asbestos was harmful. It looks like Cindy gave him a pretty good answer there.
Yeah.
So I think we've got that covered. If there's anything else anybody would like to ask or contribute, now's the time.
And I would like to say, just so you guys understand, you know, Mike and I were talking about cleaning the bunker gear that you have before we got started. And what we do, if you just have a brush and some water, you can get off a huge amount and make your gear last a lot longer, because the chemicals are going to break down and off gas by themselves, but it's a slow process and some are going to stick around for a long time. But if you can just do something as simple as water and a brush to get the big pieces off and clean that up, you will reduce a huge amount of exposure possibility that you can eliminate by just something as simple as that. And it takes, and cost is always a problem. Cost is a problem with us, but that's something super simple that you all could do that could help with that, and make what you have last that much longer.
And don't dry them in the sun. I always got to throw that one in there. We don't want to leave that.
Keep them inside, but you can rinse
Yep.
them out, clean them outside, but then keep them out of sunlight as best you can. And that's that'll help break a lot of the stuff that we talked about away.
Yep. Okay, we're up against our time here a little bit. So what I'm going to do is end our formal part of the training, but I still want to keep the floor open for questions and things like that. So I'm going to thank Webster and Cindy and everyone at the Firefighter Cancer Foundation for helping us out with today's training and sharing that great information. Thank you both. And thank you to all of you for using your bundles, taking your time out to join us for today's presentation. We appreciate all that you folks do to serve your communities as well. I invite you all to join us again next week and invite all of your friends. Thanks, everyone.